Hi, I'm Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. And this video is probably going to be most appropriately gauged towards our, should I say, more experienced members. I wouldn't describe you as old, but I would say that the practice in which some of you engage is a very old practice, antiquated even, and you need to dispense with it. And that is the practice of using promissory notes for earnest money. Stop doing that. Why do you need a promissory note for earnest money? Let me tell you the reason most people tell me. We need a promissory note because buyer doesn't want to have to deliver earnest money by the second day following mutual acceptance. They need 3 or 4 or 5 days so they can go back to wherever they live and get money out of their account and send it in. Or they want to wait until the inspection contingency has been satisfied or waived, or whatever other reason would justify a delayed deposit of the earnest money. Fine, I don't care when the buyer wants to deposit their earnest money. That's between the buyer and the seller. But you don't need a promissory note to resolve this problem. You simply need to change the number of days in which buyer must deposit their earnest money. Right now, your purchase and sale agreement, paragraph B, requires buyer to deliver their earnest money within 2 days following mutual acceptance. If your buyer wants 3 days or 5 days, or some other number of days, then change 2 to some other number. You can do it on the form itself and interlineate the change as long as it's obvious and the buyer initials the change. You can do it on a Form 34 and change that provision. But make it an agreement between the buyer and the seller that buyer will deposit their earnest money on X number of days after mutual acceptance. Why is this important instead of using a promissory note? Well, let's talk about using the promissory note. When you use a promissory note for the payment of earnest money, and in most cases earnest money is now held by an escrow company, so when you fill out the promissory note, who is the payee? Who gets the benefit of the payment of the earnest money based on the writing of the promissory note? I hope your answer is the escrow company, because that's who it should be. So buyer is going to deposit $10,000 with ABC Escrow. So if you're using a promissory note, the payee is ABC Escrow. Now let me ask you a question. If buyer ends up not paying that earnest money as required, pursuant to the terms of the promissory note, who has the legal claim against buyer for that failure based on the promissory note? Is it the seller? No, it's ABC Escrow. Now let me ask you, raise your hand if you have ever met an escrow company that would sue the buyer in that case to collect $10,000 when the collection is for money that will automatically go to the seller as earnest money. The ABC Escrow has nothing to gain from that. So are they going to sue? Of course they're not going to sue. None of you have your hands raised in answer to that question. Escrow will not sue a buyer for buyer's failure to pay funds due under an earnest money promissory note. So how is seller going to collect under that promissory note? The only way seller is going to be able to collect under that promissory note is if they are able to go through the cumbersome legal ritual of having ABC Escrow assign the note to them. What if ABC Escrow doesn't do that? You solve this problem, brokers, buyer brokers, by simply abandoning the really antiquated practice of using a promissory note for earnest money. If your buyer wants to delay the deposit of earnest money, make it longer than 2 days following mutual acceptance, then change that provision of the purchase and sale agreement. And make the deposit of the earnest money on a specific date a term of the purchase and sale agreement so that if buyer breaches, seller can go after buyer directly based only on the terms of the purchase and sale agreement without the interference or the distraction of this promissory note. Make sense? If not, please know that you are welcome to email me and we can engage in a wonderful discussion about whether or not promissory notes should continue to be part of the real estate industry. My email address, legalhotline@warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.